And welcome back. And of course, a big thank you to Minister Al-Khoury there, looking at the financial inclusion for the digital economy. And this is a conversation that we are going to continue. And of course, I'm absolutely delighted now that we are joined by the Managing Director and a partner from BCG in the MENA region. He is a gentleman who's been with BCG since 2014, and of course, with a big focus on banking, capital markets, digital and growth strategy, exchanges, NGOs, and Islamic finance. So basically, he can cover all of the bases for us. And this as we look at fast-tracking financial inclusion for the digital economy. So I'd like to welcome now the Managing Director and Partner with BCG here in MENA, Mustafa Bosca. So Mustafa, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Great to be on this panel today.
Indeed, I really welcome your expertise, particularly in this session. And we heard there from the Minister, of course, working diligently towards that digital inclusion for the financial and for the wider economy, basically here in the UAE. But if I could maybe get a more general response from you, and when we head towards Q4, here we are, the end of the year. It is the start of a new decade, of course, 2020, but people had a lot of different expectations when this year started. So if we look back on that year, a year of uncertainty, unpredictability, what would you say have been perhaps the key learnings for the world when it comes to the digital economy, particularly where financial institutions are concerned?
Indeed, at night has been a very challenging and uncertain year for many people. Some have, of course, suffered more than others. But I think when it comes to financial institutions, there were a number of, let's say, things that everyone hoped happened this year. So from the digital transformation perspective, this has been a, let's say, a good year for banks. And when we look at that, we see three, I would say, key developments. The first one, I would say, a mass migration to digital channels started this year. Based on our estimates, we've done a survey around the world with banking customers, some 600 million people, around 15 to 20% of total banking customers enrolled in digital channels first time in their lives. And this number, the percentage in the MENA region is much higher. We're looking at around 40 to 50% of people joined digital channels first time during COVID. The second thing is around the cashless payments, the cash usage, which has been, a key, let's say, goal for many governments around the world to reduce cash uses and go towards cashless society. Around 40 to 60% drop we have seen in cash usage during COVID times. And the third thing is trust towards digital-only banks. So banks have been, for a long time, this brick and mortar branches, and they were, trying to push people towards digital channels. And we have seen a lot of neobanks that were started over the past couple of years. And we see that the trust towards a bank that does not have branches have significantly increased. 1/3 of customers are saying that they have no problem. They look forward to opening accounts with a bank that doesn't have branches, and another 1/3 is saying that they will be willing to try how it will go. So this is a tremendous change in consumer sentiment. And when we look at Middle East, especially GCC countries like UAE, KSA, this number is even much higher, right? Around 90% of consumers are saying that they either have no issue whatsoever or willing to try a bank which does not have any branches. So from that perspective, getting people onto digital banking, COVID has done a fundamental change in terms of consumer sentiment. I think the challenge going forward is going to be how do we maintain this momentum and make sure that those people who enrolled into those digital channels will be staying there and using them more and more.
And I think it's, it's the focus, it's the goal, it's the aspiration, but I think we have still, a bit of a way to go. There is a bit of joined up thinking that needs to happen. I mean, just a quick example, we had registered for a procurement with a company recently, and they needed, wait for this, a bank certificate. And I have never seen a more cumbersome process in terms of applying and physically going and handing it in and putting my stamp and doing all this. So this is still going on. So we're not quite there yet in terms of digital banking. And, do you believe that that level has to really maybe step up and also be able to make processes more simplified? Because with everything gone digital, surely something like that, where they know their clients, they know the company's a long-time customer, and issuing a bank certificate that basically just says you're a customer should be a lot more simple. So we're not out of the woods yet when it comes to smooth processes, I think. What do you think?
You are absolutely right there. And when we look at this digital transformation, both for banks as well as governments and regulators, it's a spectrum. And certain banks, certain, let's say, regulators are much more mature in their ability to move their processes and customers into digital channels. But you have a number of banks and players out there, they are yet to get to that level. So absolutely, the work has not been done, and I think there's still a long journey to be able to move everybody and all the processes and procedures into digital channels. Having said that, the human interaction is still very, very important. So although what you say is, for example, is a simple transaction, you don't need human interaction for that, and it needs to be simple, digitized. But when you're making an important decision, buying a house or an investment decision, then you would like to speak to a relationship manager who knows you, who understands you. So we will see, I think, going forward, easier, simpler things moving into digital channels, and there's a long way to go there for some banks than others. But in the meantime, we need to also perfect that human interaction to make sure that we are giving a good user experience for the clients across the entire spectrum of products.
Yes, and of course, as you say, Mustafa, too, this is the transition, I think, and we're definitely right in there. I had just talked to the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure just a little while ago, and also the Minister of Economy there, and both of them talking about the speed at which the government came up and stepped up in terms of what they could do. But they have already put a lot of processes here in the UAE in terms of government, not just in the financial side. So it's about, I suppose, everybody talking to each other and all these systems talking to each other. And one day we will find, I suppose, that the digital harmony, it will happen, I think, because, and as you said, the pace of pickup in the last few months has been quite incredible.
Exactly. And it has to happen also from a number of different perspectives. Financial inclusion, which is our topic today, right? So I was the other day speaking with a bank in Nigeria. They would like to set up the processes to be able to go and serve customers out there in the rural areas, and they cannot do it with a brick and mortar bank which has branches. So they definitely need to use digital technologies. But in the meantime, there are still, issues around the regulations are concerned, like digital identity, for example, is still a big topic, and a number of regulators and governments are trying to figure out, like, how do I, go and identify when I'm doing a transaction digitally with a financial institution, that is the person that I want to transact with, right? So from that perspective, I think, like, for example, on the payment side, a lot has happened, but you need to move into credit, insurance, savings, so entire spectrum of products need to be moved into digital channels. And but that is not enough. At BCG, we think about a 3-level framework to achieve digital financial inclusion, a sustainable financial inclusion. Then the second step is, of course, once they are on those channels, clients are on those channels, we would like them to be using those channels more and more for their daily transactions, for important decisions, and credit is becoming, through the former digital channels. And the last step, which is also very, very important if you want to make this sustainable, access to financing, access to banking sustainable, the underlying economics should work. Like the fee structure should be in line with what the customers are expecting. But in the meantime, the cost structure for the financial institutions who are serving those customers needs to be aligned to that as well, right? So we are working with a number of governments along this journey to make sure that they are upgrading their processes and their regulations towards this. And it is a journey that they need to move, and they cannot do it alone also. So that they will need to not only with banks, so a big number of stakeholders from different parts of the government and the society needs to come together to achieve sustainable financial inclusion goals.
Absolutely, and I mean that needs to happen in the developed market. But I think what you had brought up there, when we look at financial inclusion, and particularly looking at emerging and developing markets, you talk about Nigeria. I had an opportunity a few years ago to go to Somaliland of all places, and everything was on the phone. We stopped at a gas station. There was a number you paid on the phone. We had coffee. We didn't have all the numbers, but our colleagues did. And again, in terms of making sure that everybody can get that money, and also when services are paid for, when farmers are getting paid for crops and things like that, that's beginning to really shift what is happening, particularly in emerging and developing markets. And how important is this, I suppose, for empowering people that maybe had to rely on sort of middlemen to get that money in the past?
So this is I think very, very important. So we were the other day talking about, if we continue with the Nigeria example, it's I think it was very interesting for me to hear some of the things happening there. So you have the farmers, and around the farmers you have a large community of people depending on that, and they need to export their products, right? So the easier you get that money transferred from export markets all the way to the farmers is extremely important for the well-being of that community, of that group of people. And it doesn't stop from there, right? So if they want to grow that business, and if you are not able to provide them with the right financing solutions to be able to grow whatever they're doing, if they want to expand their land, or if they want to do some value added products from what they are growing, they will need financing. And life, we have seen it this year, sometimes really puts you in difficult situations. Then we need to make sure that insurance and savings are also working for those communities, and banks are providing those in the right manner, in the way that community needs. And when you look at all these aspects, definitely the digital channels play an important role to bring more financing solutions and more banking solutions to the communities around the world.
Talk to me about, when we talk about fintech, we hear a lot about it as it's the way forward. This is what's happening. But we also hear and with caution, perhaps, about the safety and the security. And when we look at cybersecurity, particularly in this space, it's hugely important. Is everybody doing enough? Is the sector aligned in terms of what needs to be done? And, you know, what reassurance can people have that this is a safe space to be in?
So it is a very exciting space to be in. There's great activism going on. A lot of young entrepreneurs are trying to solve issues that you're facing with your banking certificate. And we have a fintech control tower. We see more than 10,000 fintechs active along different parts of the financial services value chain. And of course, finance is financial services is a regulated area, and regulators are really trying to find the right ways to make sure that this sector is growing and contributing to the society and the economy in the right manner. We see around 40 what we call regulatory sandboxes around the world, either active or under development, and 22 of these are in Asian markets. So we are, you know, like the Asian Business Leadership Forum, and 8 are in the Middle East. So I think the regulators are definitely doing a lot of effort on two sides. One is making sure that the innovation is happening, and these young entrepreneurs actively going and solving issues that were out there for a long period of time in the best possible manner. And on the second part of it is that you're creating the right supervision framework. A number of new business models are coming, especially when you think about the payment space. And I expect that there will be some interesting business models will emerge on the lending side, emerging or will emerge more on the lending side, asset management side, capital raising. And the regulators are creating new licensing approaches, supervision approaches to make sure that the fintech sector is, first of all, creating the right innovation, and second, making sure that it is safe, sound, and the customers are can trust this sector. It is growing rapidly, and I think regulators are moving and adapting also in a fast manner to be able to grow this sector.
As you said, that's what has to happen. We have to have that security in place whereby people and institutions are feeling that, you know, their money is safe. There's nothing worse than reading the headlines about fraud in the fintech and the danger of lack of maybe security within the space. And I suppose they are unfortunately sometimes the only headlines that make it out there, whereby every day there's probably so many, you know, good examples of an industry that is indeed thriving. When we look at the regulation, I mean, we're going to see it at different stages in different countries and in different sizes of financial institutions and all of that. Would there be, do you ever see a sort of a global standardization, or would that be possible? Is it even desirable? Is it necessary? What do you think?
So I think when something is new, when something is very innovative, every country, every regulator is creating their own, let's say, solutions, which is tailored to their local needs. But in the meantime, when we look at these, 40 plus regulators around the world, we see some, like common understandings emerging. So I think there is, a lot of things on the payment space. There is some good common understanding. I don't think that standardization is there. But when it comes to the other side of the financial services, be it lending, asset management, capital raising, I think there's a lot of trial and error and, tailoring whatever the need for that market is. But I think eventually, as things become more mature, then we will see, I think, standardization there, where things are right now, I think the way it is going, in my view, is what it should be, right? So we shouldn't be pushing for standardization and harmonization too early. But I think eventually, when certain business models become proven and tested, and starts becoming the dominant type of business model across the countries, then there are, I think, the right forums that standardization and harmonization can happen in that regulation, in the regulatory space for fintech.
Of course, within the fintech space, we have a lot of new ideas, a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity. You must be looking often at startups and looking at what's out there. Do you see anything unusual, anything different, anything even more creative that you think perhaps, wow, we should have thought of that years ago? What are you seeing that's emerging in terms of the innovation within this industry that perhaps we should maybe pay special attention to, or maybe have a second glance at, that could actually build in a lot more efficiencies and make our lives easier when it comes to that financial inclusion in the digital world?
So I think an important, let's say, challenge for the region is around the Islamic finance. So as I said, there are more than 10,000 fintechs out there, and when we look at how many of these have solutions that are complying with the Sharia requirements, it's just a handful. I think we counted around 90, less than 100. So I think there's a big white space here, especially in the Middle East, around that. So there is a big innovation happening when it comes to conventional services and products, but the Islamic fintech is lagging behind. And I think what I expect is over the next couple of years, we will see some also big movements in that area as well. And the thing is that, I mean, on one side, of course, we would want to see some business models proven and tested on the conventional sides are adopted. But in the meantime, I think there needs to be also some genuine innovative solutions that are coming from the, let's say, the principles of Islamic finance as well, brought to the Middle Eastern customers.
Indeed, of course, when we talk about Islamic finance, a lot of focus in this region, without a doubt, a lot of focus, in countries like Malaysia, in parts of Asia, and that, but also, I mean, a huge hub in the likes of London and, places like that too. So I think would you agree that it's also an area where there's huge growing global interest actually in the growth of Islamic finance?
Absolutely, and I think it's a bit, interesting that you brought this up. One of the recently, let's say, licensed fintechs in the region around the asset management space was set up in New York. And they were set up as like they're bringing investment products in a Sharia compliant manner. So absolutely, you have entrepreneurs, innovative mindsets around the world, and they're looking at the problem, and whatever good solutions are out there are finding its way, be it from here to Asia to here, here to Europe, Americas to here. So I think we are, like living in a connected world, and I think this innovation is also, and those innovative minds are also making a great use of this connected world when it comes to Islamic finance as well.
And now, one thing that's maybe just a little off topic, but I think it encompasses topic. You head up BCG's social impact work as well. And I think when we look at financial inclusion, when we look at, the digital economy, and, it almost ties into, I suppose, more global social impact in many ways. And just before I let you go, I mean, maybe a few thoughts on just how important this can be and how game-changing for the world in many ways this will be.
So I think financial services and access to financing is at the core of the well-being of a person as well as a community and a society, and financial inclusion is an important topic for BCG, as well as many of my clients, be it banks or governments, and it is a great cause, and it creates big impact in the livelihoods of people. I mean, if you are able to finance education for someone, you're able to provide access to better savings opportunities, you're able to make sure that people are transacting in the way that they want and the place that they want. This creates well-being and turns into economic development in the end.
Indeed, I think, and it's so important and the growth that is to come, because I think we look around developing markets and we look around emerging markets, and it's very clear what's happening. There's a big push in terms of eradication of poverty, and this is what people want, and ultimately, it's about making sure that people get paid for their work and get paid for their services. And I think that the digital economy, without a doubt, I mean, on that very basic level, of course, it moves into the corporate world and all of that on a huge level. But I think we have to look at the holistic picture. So, Mustafa, thank you so much. You were obviously the right man for the job, and hopefully I'll get my bank certificate the next time I need it with a lot more ease and flawlessness. But I really want to thank you for sharing your insight with us. Thanks so much. Mustafa Bosca there. Now, when we come back just after the break, we're going to take a quick break, and it'll give you an opportunity to look around the platform. I hope you've been doing that. I hope you enjoy it. It really is quite an interesting platform. I hope you'll agree too. And this is, of course, going to be the home where we're going to have many, many more ABLF talks, and we're going to be able to use this throughout the year. As I said, this is just the big start, the big launch to our season for the next 6 months. And I'm particularly honored that I'm going to be able to join you for all of these. So it's a real delight to be part of ABLF Talks as we go forward. So for the moment, I'm going to give you an opportunity whereby you can actually head over and take a little break and look into some of the networking opportunities. And very, very shortly, when we come back, I'm going to be joined by Riz Khan, who will move our next session. So enjoy your break, and we'll be back with you shortly.